programs is basically experiential content. So what that basically means is that we take the experience of all the different entrepreneurs, all the different companies, and we basically use that in the programs that we offer. The other part of it is also is that in Silicon Valley or even around the world, one of the things that we often see is that content is always changing. I mean, week after week after week, new things are happening, new laws, new ways of innovation. So as a part of the dynamic part, those are things that we continuously update what we do as a company, and that's what we basically teach. So to give you an idea, these are all the different people who are in our database. These are the people from VCs to lawyers to salespeople to marketing people, digital marketing. These are all the different experts that we basically use to put together our content. These are some of the programs that we offer as well. If you take a look at it, it's how do you think like an entrepreneur, how do you raise venture capital, what happens when you raise venture capital, growth hacking, lean methodology. These are all the different programs that we basically offer. Now, one of the things, because of the interest of time, I'm going through this very quickly, so please bear with me on that. The other thing that is very critical especially in the Valley, and I'm sure even here, is how do you tell your story? How do you tell your story in 1 minute? How do you tell your story in 2 minutes? And how do you tell your story in 5 minutes? These are typically things that if you were to ever visit the Valley, and if you were to ever present your company, you have to follow this. You have to know how to basically say, what is your problem? What is your solution? What's the market size? What's your business model? What's your competition? You got to do all this in 5 minutes. Right? That's the opportunity you're going to get to present your story. So you have to do it very quickly, and you have to do it really well. Right? There's the other part, which is the art of pitching. How do you tell? How do you establish credibility? These are the different things that we basically put together as a company, and we help startups be able to tell their story when they have to go out and meet customers or clients or partners or even venture capitalists. One of the other things that I have personally been very impressed. I have traveled around to various countries around the world, spoken on different entrepreneurship topics and things like that. But one of the things that is very, very impressive about Chile, right, and is the Startup Chile program. To be one of the top 20 cities in the world in terms of startups is incredible. I mean, that's a huge achievement. There are so many countries that are very well developed and that have programs, but Chile has been right on the forefront in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship. And even here at the universities and some of the other places in Punta Montt and Temuco, and you see all these evolving ideas and innovation, which is amazing. And that hats off to you for being a part of that economy. And I'm sure in the next couple of years, Chile would have a great startup innovation and economy here in the country itself. So one of the things about, in terms of being an entrepreneur, right? What do you do? I mean, typically in an entrepreneur, you basically think that you can change the world. You can make a difference in this world, right? You think different. Typically, like even when I grew up, you go to school, you go to university, and you find a job, right? That's the typical life that you go through. But as an entrepreneur, you're crazy. You are literally crazy thinking that you can change the world. But that's the best part about it, right? That's what makes you different. That's what makes you want to go out there and change it. I mean, you want to do something different. And your mind, you think differently, right? So I like to basically think that entrepreneurs are crazy, of course, in a good way, right? That's what's critical in terms of wanting to do that. If you don't have that passion, if you don't have that, then entrepreneurship is not for you. Right? But it's amazing to see how people think, how they think differently, how their mind works, right? And that's what in any entrepreneurial society is what basically is primarily encouraged, is to think outside the box. Okay? Now, one of the things that you typically see as being an entrepreneur, it is very, very difficult. It's not easy. Right? Typically, you have a great idea, you want to make a difference, you have all the energy, you have all the passion to do this, but then you realize that once you start, constantly, it's a battle. It's a huge issue being able to do a startup. It's not easy. I have been through this so many times, right? That it's very hard. But that's what your life becomes. But the rewards, right, what you get from it is amazing, but that's the typical life that you're going to lead. You're constantly you have to keep pushing yourself to get where you want to go, okay? If you also think about it, is even as a startup, right, you have a great idea, you want to solve a problem, you want to do something great, but what happens is that, this is a quote basically from Mike Tyson, who is the boxer, right? And what he basically says is that you have this great plan, you want to build this, you want to do this, you want to achieve this. But what happens is, as soon as you start your company and you get going, basically till you get punched in the face, everything changes. Everything changes. You sometimes, very often in a company which is well known in the valley called pivoting, you start off with one idea and you completely change 3 months later into a different idea, and a year later you're doing something completely different. Right. The second thing is you're looking for money. Money doesn't happen. Money doesn't come through. You're waiting for a customer. The customer doesn't come through. So your life will constantly change just because of what life is like. Entrepreneurship is not something that's going to go like this, right? It's always very up and down. So if you take a look at some of the statistics when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's amazing that 90% of the startups fail. Right, 90% of the startups fail. What does that tell you? Even in a venture capital, even in a VC world, 9 of their 10 investments fail. 1 succeeds. Right, 1 succeeds. So even in a case like this, our goal is to basically, when we teach entrepreneurship or when we teach you business methodologies or when we talk to you about funding, the whole goal is to make sure that we are giving you the opportunity or the chance to be more successful, right? These are the mistakes that people have made, so don't make those same mistakes. This is the advice, these are the mentors, these are the people who can basically guide you along that path, okay? Another thing is, I really enjoy this little chart. This is how life is. This is how life is in a startup, right? Life is good, life is bad. Life is good, life is bad. There are days you want to jump off the bridge because that's how difficult it is. And more than anything else in a startup, it's up here. You go through emotions, you go through a lot of these things daily. This is literally something that can happen to you in 1 week. Right? But it's the passion, it's that drive, it's that desire to make a difference that basically continues down the road. Right? There are days in the last year you go, what am I going to do? Nothing's working. I should give up. Right? But the next day, you're going to get a phone call from somebody that's going to change your life. Right? So this is how entrepreneurship is. Right? Even if, whether it's in Chile, I don't know how, I don't understand the system here that much, but if you're in Silicon Valley, this is what life is going to be like. Every entrepreneurial company goes through this literally on a weekly basis. Okay. I'm going to give you an example also. One of the things that you generally see in entrepreneurship is basically people, right? People are some of your biggest challenges, and one of the reasons I like to use this as an example is, I'm sure you heard of Elon Musk, right? Right? Elon Musk is the CEO now of Tesla, and he's also the CEO and founder of SpaceX. And this is just a very quick example of what his life was like. Right? It's that failure, it's the ability to fail and then succeed. So just very quickly, Elon Musk had a company called Zip2. He sold that company. A couple of years later, he started another company called X.com, right? And this was a financial services company. He started it with 2 guys, one guy called Harris Frick and Christopher Payne. So Elon Musk, today you know him as a great CEO. As soon as he started the company and he brought co-founders, what happened? The co-founders did not want Elon Musk, although he was the founder, they wanted to get rid of him. And they wanted to this Frick wanted to become the CEO. Right? So the turmoil started within the company. Down the street, there was another company called Confinity. And Confinity was led by Peter Thiel. Anyone know who Peter Thiel is? right? Peter Thiel is probably one of the most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, right? He's the guy who basically backed Facebook, right? He's a billionaire and he has tons of money, and he's very famous in the Valley. So if you take Peter Thiel, there are two companies, X.com and Confinity, who are competing with each other. Eventually they merged, right? They became one company. Peter Thiel resigned from Confinity resigned from the new company, X.com, because he couldn't work with Elon Musk. He resigned. Elon Musk then finally gets onto a plane and he gets married, and he goes off to Australia for his honeymoon, right? On the plane ride over, while he's in Australia, he's flying over 14 hours from San Francisco, the employees in the company, the employees who worked inside the company, wrote a letter to the board of directors saying that they want Elon Musk. They don't have confidence in their CEO. They want him fired. Now think about it. You're the founder of your company. You get on a plane, and by the time your plane lands, you're fired from your company. Right? It doesn't happen all the time, but this is very, very typical of what goes on in Silicon Valley, especially with companies that are venture-backed. So he lands there, next thing you know, he's fired from the company, right? And Peter Thiel became the CEO, and the company was eventually renamed PayPal. And PayPal, obviously, sold for several $1 billion. Right? So this is a quick story of how you go from the founder to being kicked out of the company to creating a new company and then being sold for $1 billion. Right? This is typical. This is typical of what goes on in the Valley every single day. Okay? So if I was to ask you a question, right, based on all my years of experience and things, what we do is, what do you think the most difficult thing in a startup is? Is it customers? Is it money? Is it partners? What do you think the most difficult problem is in a startup? Anybody want to take a guess? Pardon? Yourself. Anyone else? Staying together. Very close, right? So the most difficult thing that you will face in a startup is this. Right? I have been through this so many times. The hardest thing you'll face in a startup is people. You look for the best co-founder, you get the co-founder. 2 months later, the co-founder doesn't like you. The co-founder doesn't work with you. Then the co-founder will work with somebody else. You get a customer, the customer doesn't like you. You get a VC, the VC doesn't like the direction that you're going in. As a CEO and as a founder, this is what you're constantly battling with. Right? If you get money from an angel, if you get money from a VC, if you get money from anybody, they're going to call you, hey, how's my money? What are you doing? Right? And this is the pressure that you always feel. Your employees, you can go through a company, you can start with these 3 employees, 6 months later, you'll have a completely different team. Right? These are the challenges. This is the emotional roller coaster. People are one of the hardest things. If you get the right people in your company, that can make all the difference in what you do and in your success. You might start off with one product and you might end up with something else, but you need the people and you need their support to build it. Right? This is the biggest challenge that you face in the company. It's not money, it's not product. It's dealing with people and basically all of you being able to do and say the same thing. Anyone know what this is? Right? This is the latest buzzword in Silicon Valley. And what is it? Basically, everybody these days wants to be a unicorn. Right? And what is a unicorn? Everybody wants to be a $1 billion company. How many of you want to be a $1 billion company? Anyone here $1 billion? Right? But one thing I'm going to basically mention is this, right? And this is the things that a lot of people don't understand. When I did my first startup and I ran into issues with the startup, this is one of the challenges I faced. So I always like to ask this question. You as a company, you as a startup, right? You own 50% of your company. You own 50% of your company. And let's say somebody offers you, somebody willing to buy your company for 10 million. And you own 50% of a company. You're going to walk away as the owner of the company with $5 million in your pocket, right? Now you say, and this is, what I'm basically mentioning is a personal experience. I had a startup, I own 50% of the company, we did get an offer for $10 million, right? So which means I would have walked away with 5 million. But the people around me and my advisor said, don't go and sell your company for 10 million. You can probably sell your company for $100 million, right? Because it was a big company that was looking to acquire us. I didn't know this at that time, I was still new. So then I look at it and go, what is 5% of $100 million? So now we sell the company for $100 million. I get venture capital, I go through all this, but I only own 5% of my company because the VCs and the rest of the people own. What's the number that I get? It's still $5 million. It's still $5 million, right? Now, let's say I want to get bigger. I want to become an unicorn. I want to get to that level. Now, the company is worth, let's take a look at what's 1%. Typically, if you're venture funded and if you go through the process, you're not going to own much. You're not going to own much of your company. If I sold my company for $500 million and I own 1%, how much money do I still make? Right, I still make $5 million. So whether I sold my company for 10 million, whether I sold it for 100 million, or whether I sold it for 500 million, I still make the same thing. But on the other hand, if I was to create a $500 million company, how much of resources is going to take? How much of people is it going to take? How much of headaches is it going to take, right? So these are the simple questions that you basically need to ask yourself in terms of what do I want in terms of a startup and what do I want to get out of it, right? These are the simple things that will help guide you along the way in terms of entrepreneurship and in terms of what you want to achieve as a company. Another thing that I just want to quickly go through very quickly here is that typically on your team, when you get venture funding or when you get anything at all, you're typically going to have the founders. We're going to briefly talk about what an alpha dog is. You're going to have an advisory board. You're going to have a board of directors who is basically your boss, right? So you as the founder and the CEO, your board is going to control you. Your board is going to manage you. Your board is going to tell you what to do, right? They're going to guide you, your board and then your employees, right? So let's take a look very briefly as to what an alpha dog is. An alpha dog, typically you see in any company, you're going to have a CEO and a founder probably. You're going to have a chief technical officer and you're going to have a chief revenue officer. If you take a look at you as a startup and you're trying to raise money, you're trying to create product, you're trying to build customers, you're trying to build partners, typically one of the things that we basically say based on studying a lot of the successful Silicon Valley companies is this concept of what you call an alpha dog. Now, who's an alpha dog? An alpha dog is basically a very successful, potentially an entrepreneur, potentially somebody who has raised money, and somebody who is very successful. If you get an alpha dog on your team, and if you find that alpha dog on your team, that can change your life, and it can change your company, and it'll give you the opportunity to succeed. Right? In the valley, there are plenty of alpha dogs. If you can convince somebody to be your alpha dog, that will make such a big difference. You're not going to get up on stage and do 5-minute pitches and pitching here and pitching there. Why? The alpha dog, if the alpha dog likes you, the alpha dog is basically going to say, let me make a phone call and go, we need to raise $3 million. We need to make $5 million. Let me call my friends. So then he's going to pick up the phone, he or she is going to pick up the phone and go, hey, I am working with this company, we need to raise $3 million. And the money is in the bank. Right. The second part of it is on a board of directors. Typically, when you get a board of directors, when you get venture capital in Silicon Valley, the board of directors typically will control the company. You don't have the opportunity. It's very rare that you get a chance to control your company. If you get an alpha dog, the VCs will go, okay, they have an alpha dog, they have a guy who's successful, they have a guy who's done really well for himself. So as a result of that, we let the alpha dog guide the company, right? So this is one of the routes to success, right? Now let's take a look at an example. Obviously, if you take a look at some of these companies, all of you have used Facebook. I know Facebook is very common here in Chile and a lot of you use it. But let's take a look very briefly. Facebook was originally called Face Smash. Right? They were a company that basically rated girls. That was the product that they built. Sean Parker, anyone know who Sean Parker is? Right, Sean Parker was the founder and CEO of Napster. In this case, Sean Parker discovers Facebook. Sean Parker becomes the alpha dog in this case, and he brings Mark Zuckerberg from Harvard University to Silicon Valley. Right? Mark Zuckerberg did not get up on stage and do pitches. Mark Zuckerberg did not get up and do a pitch competition. He didn't do that. Right? Mark Zuckerberg. So he suggested he move to Silicon Valley. Sean Parker introduces him to Peter Thiel. We just talked about Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was the billionaire out of PayPal. Peter Thiel, Mark Pincus, and Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn. These three guys, Peter Thiel, Mark Pincus, and Reid Hoffman, they're typically three big alpha dogs. Right? So is Sean Parker. What do? They give him $500,000 and say, go and get 16 million users. Right? So that's what happens. These guys invest $500,000 in Facebook. A year later, Facebook basically raises another 12 million, and the value of the company is 87.5 million. When Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg went to raise the money, do you think that Zuckerberg got up on stage and go, here's my company, I'm looking to raise money? No. Right? Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman, these guys pick up the phone and go, hey, we want you to invest in this company. And deals happen like that. That's how money gets, that's how valuations set up in your company, right? So in general, if you take a look at Facebook today is worth $250 billion, right? But the success behind Facebook is basically the alpha dogs that basically drove this company, right, to what it's today, right? So this is a perfect example of what an alpha dog can do for you. Very quickly, Google, right? I'm not going to go into too much details. Same thing with Google. There's a guy by the name of Andy Bechtolsheim who is basically the founder of Sun Microsystems. Andy is the one who gave them the first $100,000, and there's another guy by the name of Ram Shriram. They are the first guys who put money into Google. Ram Shriram and Andy Bechtolsheim, two huge alpha dogs, two big alpha dogs. What do? You know what happened to Google. They joined, they pick up the phone, can you make investments? Can you do this? Can you do that? And that's how Google grew. Right? If you take a look at a lot of the successful companies in the Valley, these alpha dogs that they got to support them made all the difference in terms of the success of the company. So what I like to tell startups is, go do your startup. At the same time, while you're looking for money, at the same time, while you're getting up and pitching, go out and actually look for that alpha dog. Right? That can make the difference in what you do as a company. One other thing that I also like to put is that in Silicon Valley, one of the things that is very common and that drives towards the success of your company is basically your network. Right? In the Valley, it's all about who you know. Right? There's a saying in Silicon Valley, your network is your net worth. Right? So the who do you know? Even if you take a guy like Zuckerberg, he might be down here, but it's all the people that he knows, or the other people that his lawyer might know, or his banker might know, or his friend might know, or his VC might know, or the partners. These are the people that basically help you create your company, make the introductions, maybe do more research, maybe get customers. These are the people that basically help drive this. So at the end of the day, whatever you do as a company, find that alpha dog, right? Build your network. Don't feel shy, don't feel afraid to reach out to people. LinkedIn is a great tool. It's an amazing tool to go build. The person who is sitting next to you can change your life. can change your life. And one of the reasons is don't ever be afraid to tell somebody what you're doing, your idea, what's going to happen. And I like to basically end with a quick story. I happen to know a couple. They were in a startup, husband and wife, right? They were working on a startup, and they had a little baby who was 6 months old. That baby, while they were doing this, when the husband and wife were working on the startup, they had to take care of the baby as well. So they had somebody, they had a maid who basically looked after the baby, right, while they were both working. So in the end, they were struggling. They were really struggling. So the mom told the maid, look here, we don't have any more money to pay you, right? We have to let you go. We don't have money to pay you. So when the mom told the maid this, the maid turned around and said, you know, I work for someone else in the couple of houses down here, and I think that person invests in companies, right? They do investment in companies. So she says, let me talk to them and see, let me just tell them. And guess what? That maid made the introduction to a venture capitalist whom she worked for, that basically in turn invested in the husband and the wife and their company. Right? So in a case like this, you just never know who you speak to that is going to change your life and your company. Out of 10 people, 9 of them might be useless, but that one person could be on the plane next to you, could be at the dinner table next to you, could be at a networking event. These are the people who can basically change your life. And this is what, in the Valley, this is what basically drives the Silicon Valley ecosystem. For me personally, I work during the day, and at night time, I go to events, meetups, whatever there is in the Valley, you just go and you meet new people. You just continue to meet people because somebody there is going to change your life. One of the co-founders that I found in my company, I actually found him because his iPhone broke. The glass cracked. Right? So would you think that you would find a founder like that? But that's what basically happened. So the two things I would basically leave, there is a lot more lessons to go on this. In the interest of time is build your ecosystem, build your ecosystem, and build your ecosystem. The second thing is go spend the time, as much as you're looking for money, go out there and look for that alpha dog. That can make the difference in terms of what you do as a company. Okay? Unfortunately, I got to run. If there's any quick questions, I can take them. If not, I got to take off here fairly quickly. So I'm going to open it up to any questions that you might have. And don't feel shy. Yes. Okay, so I totally get that. I mean, that's totally understandable. The ecosystem in Silicon Valley is obviously developed. It's huge. The lawyers, the VCs, the bankers, there's all that stuff that goes on, right? One of the things that you see in Chile here is you're starting to develop that, right? You're starting to develop that ecosystem, right? But at the same time, I have personally seen a lot of Chilean companies that come to the US. They come on visits and tours and things like that, right? But on the other hand, also, if you have something that you're passionate about, and if you have an idea that's going to change the world, right? Let's say you're doing that. There is literally, if you use something like LinkedIn, right? Whether it's somebody you know or you track them down, right? Sometimes you might not get a response at all. You might not get a response at all. But you have to spend the time literally trying to make the effort to reach out to those people, right? I mean, like I said, 99 people out of 100 might say no to you. But that one person, you never know who that person might be, right? I mean, even if you take the MeetLatAm group here, I mean, I'm super impressed how much the network they have created. And how do they create the network? They just reach out to people, right? Even for me to come here and speak, I got introduced through a friend of a friend, right? So you just never know what the connections are going to be, right? It's up to you to make that effort to do it. Now, typically, people don't use Facebook to make the connections. It depends on the culture. In Korea, if you're trying to reach somebody, your best bet is to reach them through Facebook. In the Silicon Valley, your best bet is to reach them through LinkedIn. Right? You might find if you're a non-profit or a social enterprise, you might find a social organization in Silicon Valley who might be able to make that introduction for you. Right? We joined a social entrepreneurship. We're a social entrepreneurship. We're a social company, right? We do impact in terms of our social impact with education. We have met somebody, we joined a company, and we got the Taiwan market opened up just because of that company that we joined. Right? So you have to make the effort to reach out to these organizations and do the research to go out there. And the ecosystem is building here. Right? I mean, if I can help, I'll be glad to do that too. So, yeah. Okay, I know that time is getting a little short, so with that, thank you very much. Muchas gracias.